Folks, I'm just going to get started by saying that it has been a rough year for everybody. It's a little over a year since this pandemic began. It's been a rough year. And some of us have been lucky. Many of us have lost jobs. Many of us have even lost relatives to COVID-19. Many of us have seen our neighborhoods devastated. Many of us have known people who have become mentally ill. Many of us have struggled with mental health ourselves. Many have known folks who have passed on, right? Whether because of mental health or addiction or because of the pandemic. Many of us have not been able to see our relatives or our good friends in a long time. We've been suffering in isolation. It's been a rough time. It's been a rough time. This has been a rough year for so many people. And how do we keep going? How do we keep going through all of that? Looks like things are starting to open up. I'm hearing stuff about this Indian vaccine, the Indian strand. The Indian strand. We don't know what that means. But how do we keep going amid all of this? Well, the way we keep going is that we have an understanding of the concept of dialectical materialism. Marxism. Long before Karl Marx was talking about economics, long before Karl Marx was talking about politics, Karl Marx was talking about philosophy. And Marxist philosophy is called dialectical materialism. And it can be summed up in a beautiful phrase. It's not even a phrase, it's a mathematical formula. And this is what it is. A does not equal A. A does not equal A. There is no way that this first A can be the equivalent of this second A. Because all things in the universe are constantly in a state of change. The Greek philosopher Heraclitus, he said, you never step into the same river twice. You never step into the same river twice. A does not equal A. No two things in the universe are identical. All that exists is matter, but this matter that exists is constantly in a state of change. And that change often comes about through conflict. First, you have a thesis, and then something comes along to clash with the thesis, and that is called an antithesis. The two of them clash, and the result is called a synthesis. And then that synthesis is a new thesis. And then along comes a new antithesis, and then you get a new synthesis. And that this is how the universe advances. Change comes through conflict. All matter is constantly in a state of motion. And it is this understanding that has gotten us through the worst of times. If you want solid proof that A does not equal A, I urge you to look at the most populous country in the world, China. 100 years ago, a group of people met in the basement of a women's dormitory in the French concession of Shanghai, in territory in Shanghai that had been seized by the French imperialists. A group of Chinese people met in the basement of a women's dormitory, and they conducted proceedings to found an organization whose goal was to completely change things in the country. And that organization that met with representatives from across the country, The whole organization was only 60 people. And there were only 25 people in that room. And they came together, and they had a meeting, and they could not even finish their meeting. They couldn't finish their meeting because they realized when they took some breaks and went for a walk that they were being followed by the police. So to finish their meeting, they had to leave the women's dormitory. They had to leave the basement of the women's dormitory at the college. And they had to go and rent a boat and take it out on a lake. And on the boat, on the lake, the 25 people were finally able to finish their meeting. And they ended the meeting by standing up and raising their fists in the air and singing, "Arise, ye prisoners of starvation. Arise, ye wretched of the earth." They sang it in Chinese, of course, but you know what song I'm referring to, the theme song of international communism. A group of 60 people represented in a room of 25 people. One of those people was a guy named Mao. And Mao had been the leader of a group called the New People's Study Society. The New People's Study Society, sometimes translated as the New People's Study Group. Mao had been a follower of Peter Kropotkin, the anarchist. Peter Kropotkin, who wrote a book called The Conquest of Bread, who's also the inspiration of an entity called BreadTube. Peter Kropotkin. Mao had been a follower of Peter Kropotkin. Peter Kropotkin. But he saw what the Soviet Union was doing. He saw how the Bolsheviks had taken power and created an anti-imperialist government. So Mao Zedong and his New People's Study Group merged with some labor activists and some college professors and some intellectuals into a brand new organization that they called the Chinese Communist Party. That was 100 years ago. And today, an organization of 60 has become an organization of 90 million. 90 million. And a country that was full of malnutrition and starvation has become the second largest economy in the world. And millions of people whose ancestors lived in huts for generations, never had a chance to read and write, are living a very comfortable lifestyle. I've seen huge economic miracles. And folks, it wasn't one solid march forward. In fact, it was a long march. It was a long march. It was a very long march. First, the Chinese communists joined the KMT. They joined the Chinese Kuomintang KMT Nationalist Party. They were the communist faction of the KMT party. The KMT was a mass movement in China for independence, democracy, and the people's livelihood. The people's livelihood was vaguely understood to be a form of socialism, but it was a vague concept. The founder of the KMT party applied to join the Communist International, but Lenin told Dr. Sun Yat-sen that you are not a communist, so you cannot join, but you can observe. The KMT was a mass, progressive, anti-imperialist movement, but it was not a communist movement. But the communists joined it anyway, and they recruited from within. And they said to folks that were excited about Dr. Sun Yat-sen and nationalism in China, if you really want independence, you really want democracy, and you want people's livelihood to get better, why, you should become a communist. And with Marxism-Leninism and proletarian internationalism, we can achieve the vision of all Chinese people. We can create a whole new China that is prosperous and free. And then we know Dr. Sun Yat-sen died, and Chiang Kai-shek took power in the Chinese Communist Party, or in the Chinese KMT Nationalist Party, rather. And that Chiang Kai-shek engaged in a policy of persecuting communists and murdering them. And the Chinese communists who had worked in the cities, had organized labor unions, they were forced to flee, go into the countryside, and organize the peasantry. They were forced to form an army, their own army, the Red Army, to defend themselves from the attacks of Chiang Kai-shek and the KMT. And that then, from 1927 up until the 1930s, in the countryside, they carved out liberated territories. They redistributed land to peasants. They engaged in a program called the New Democratic Revolution. And that Trotsky spit on them and said, this is a peasant movement. These people cannot be revolutionary. And Mao Zedong and Stalin and the Chinese Communist Party and the Soviet Communist Party said they may be peasants, they may be students, they may not be from the factory working class, but that does not mean that they cannot adopt the proletarian ideology. That does not mean that they cannot join the proletarian mission. And as the 1930s progressed, in the early 1930s, they even established so much liberated territory that they declared a new government, the Chinese Soviet Republic was declared. They had their own flag and everything. The Chinese Soviet Republic. And so, 1933, 1934, Chiang Kai-shek made friends with somebody named Adolf Hitler. And Adolf Hitler dispatched one of his generals, Hans von Seeckt, to go to China to work with Chiang Kai-shek to help crush the Chinese Soviet Republic. And when all hell and high water was brought down upon them, when they were barricaded and surrounded and bombarded by Hans von Seeckt and Chiang Kai-shek, that Mao and the Red Army had to pack up. They had to leave the Chinese Soviet Republic. They had to flee up into the mountains to escape the horrendous bombardment that had rained down upon them. And at that moment, Chiang Kai-shek, Hans von Seeckt, the reactionary landlords, the U.S. imperialists, the British imperialists, all grinned. And they said, that's the last we're ever going to hear of the Chinese Communist Party. That's the last we're ever going to hear of Mao Zedong. He's running off into the mountains. He'll be never heard from again. I wish I could have been there. I really wish that I could have been there. I wish I could go back in time and grin at Hans von Seeckt and Chiang Kai-shek and Winston Churchill and Rockefeller and Carnegie and DuPont and say, enjoy yourselves. Enjoy yourselves. But I've got a feeling you're not going to be too happy. Because what's happening now, you think Mao's just running away? What's happening now is the stuff of legends. Mao's not just running away. Mao is going on the long march. And the trek that Mao is on right now going through the mountains is going to be remembered as one of the most pivotal moments in the history of China. And Mao and his soldiers are going to be going from village to village and city to city, up in the mountains with people that have never had contact with civilization, haven't seen an army in generations, and they're going to recruit them. And you know what? Mao is going up that mountain now. But pretty soon, Mao is coming down from the mountain. And Mao is going to be 10 times stronger. 10 times stronger when he comes down from that mountain. And Mao is going to become the Robin Hood of China. And there's going to be best-selling books in the United States. Red Star Over China by Edgar Snow. The Chinese Red Army Marches by Agnes Smedley. There are going to be people on every corner of the planet who think Mao is the most badass motherfucker they've ever met. There are going to be people singing songs in support of Mao in New York City. They are going to be singing songs in support of Mao in Berlin. They are going to be singing songs in support of Mao in Britain. They are going to be singing songs in support of Mao in Africa. In every corner of the world, they're going to be cheering for the Red Army. And when Japan invades, Chiang Kai-shek is going to say, "Oh, let's let Mao be taken care of, right? Let's let the Japanese take care of our little communism problem. We're not going to fight the communists." And so Chiang Kai-shek's generals are going to kidnap Chiang Kai-shek and fly him to an island and force him at the barrel of a gun to sign a treaty with Mao, a joint treaty to fight the Japanese imperialists. And that People's Liberation Army is going to become so legendary. The 8th Route Army, led by Mao Zedong, is going to become so legendary that there's going to be a Hollywood movie based on the Chinese 8th Route Army. It's going to be called Gung Ho, and it's going to be a whole Hollywood movie about how Mao has built a peasant army to fight the Japanese invaders. And Americans are going to love this movie so much that the phrase gung ho is going to become a big part of American slang. If someone's very passionate, they're going to say, "He's real gung ho, gung ho." And what is gung ho? It's an anglicized interpretation of the slogan of the Chinese Communist Party, right? All together, all for one, gung ho, gung ho. As Americans are fighting the Japanese, they're going to be chanting gung ho. As American troops are fighting the Nazis in Europe, they're going to be chanting gung ho. Everyone is going to be cheering for the Chinese Communist Party. Everyone is going to think that Mao and China and the communists are the most badass motherfuckers ever. People are going to be cheering for them in every corner of the planet. And you're going to look like idiots, Chiang Kai-shek. You're going to look like idiots, Winston Churchill. You're going to look like idiots, KMT, because you teamed up with Hitler to fight him. You're going to look like idiots. But then, it's going to get better. It's going to get better. After the Second World War is over, after the Japanese Red Army after the Japanese invaders are driven out, after the Red Army is the heroes of the world, Chiang Kai-shek is going to be stupid enough to not let the Chinese communists participate in the election. Chiang Kai-shek is going to be so stupid that he tries to tell the Chinese communists that they have to dissolve their army and hand over their weapons. Chiang Kai-shek is going to be so stupid that pretty soon his own soldiers are going to desert, and pretty soon his own army will be joining with Mao's army. And pretty soon, he's going to be running with his tail between his legs to Taiwan. Pretty soon, there's going to be something called the People's Republic of China. And the Chinese Communist Party will become a force that unifies all of China. From Hong Kong to Tibet, the Uyghur regions, Taiwan will be recognized eventually by the United States as being part of China. And all the efforts by the colonizers and the imperialists to try and tear apart this great nation, all the efforts to divide and conquer, to keep a great nation poor, will have failed. And 1/4 of humanity, China, will stand up. If you ever want any solid proof that A does not equal A, and that you never step into the same river twice, I would urge you to think about how Mao came down from the mountain and how history has changed. But there are other examples. There are other examples we can think about. There are many other examples we can think of in history. One example that I often will point to is the horrendous situation called McCarthyism. I don't know if folks know about McCarthyism, but McCarthyism was awful. People think McCarthyism was some Hollywood actors. People think McCarthyism was some censorship. No. I know people who lived through the McCarthy period, and they will tell you how bad things were. During the McCarthy period, they passed a law in 1951 called the McCarran Internal Security Act. And that law enabled the U.S. government to create a list of 2 million people who would be put into concentration camps if they declared a national emergency. There was actually a law to put communists in concentration camps. During McCarthyism, the National Board of the Communist Party were put in prison. And what did they put them in prison for? Did they put them in prison for anything they did? No. Did they put them in prison for anything that they said? No. They put them in prison for things that Vladimir Lenin said. They put them in prison for things that Karl Marx said. That's right. The Smith Act made it not just a crime to be a communist, it made it a crime to teach the necessity of the overthrow of the U.S. government or any ideology that might lead one to that conclusion. And William Z. Foster and Gus Hall and Benjamin Davis, post 100 years, Jack Satchel, they got up on the witness stand and they were asked, have you in the Communist Party ever advocated, McCarthy, have you in the Communist Party ever advocated the violent overthrow of the U.S. government? And they said, no, we have not. We have not. You can read our manifestos, you can read our programs. We advocate a peaceful transition to socialism. We have formed the Progressive Party and worked with Henry Wallace, the former vice president, to run for office. We have built labor unions. We've built the Civil Rights Congress to peacefully march for civil rights. And the judge said that doesn't really matter because you have been distributing a book called The State and Revolution by Vladimir Lenin, and you've been distributing a book called The Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx. And based on what we've read in our interpretation of The State and Revolution by Vladimir Lenin and our interpretation of the Communist Manifesto, we believe, even though you yourselves are functioning as a legal political party, even though we cannot prove that you have ever done anything illegal, even though we cannot prove that you have gone around advocating illegal things, you are teaching people an ideology that maybe possibly could lead them to come to the conclusion that the U.S. government should be violently overthrown. So on that basis, we are going to send you to federal prison. And what did the Communist Party say in their defense? They said, you're right, we have been distributing documents that might lead people to that conclusion. One of the documents we distributed is called the Declaration of Independence. If you read the Declaration of Independence, it clearly states that people have the right to abolish and overthrow their government. If you read the writings of Thomas Jefferson. He says that the tree of liberty should be watered every 10 or 20 years with the blood of tyrants. So yes, we in the Communist Party, occasionally, we mainly study Marx and Lenin and Stalin and Mao, but occasionally we do have a class where we study the writings of Thomas Jefferson. So would you like to put us in jail for distributing Thomas Jefferson's writings? Would you like to put us in jail for distributing the Declaration of Independence? Would you like to put us in jail for distributing the writings of Abraham Lincoln, where he talks about how we have the right of revolution, the right to overthrow our government? The Lincoln-Douglas debates where he talks about our revolutionary right to overthrow it. Are we guilty? Are you going to put us in jail for distributing the writings of Abraham Lincoln and Washington and Jefferson? Because they are just as violent in their rhetoric. They are just as radical in their rhetoric as Marx and Lenin and Stalin are. Are we going to be put in jail for that? The judge didn't hear it. Sent them to federal prison. Folks, it was worse than that. The FBI used to follow people around, make it so that if you were a communist, you couldn't have a job. I knew a woman who was a teacher. She was teaching. One day the FBI came to her school and said, this woman's a communist. She lost her job. She got a job at another school. Again, FBI showed up. This woman's a communist. She lost her job. She ended up working at AT&T, a telephone company. The FBI came there too. The telephone company said, as long as you don't talk about communism on the phone, we don't care what you are. And she worked at the telephone company. That happened. The Rosenbergs, given the death penalty. It's horrendous. Horrendous situation, even though all kinds of international observers said they didn't give the Soviet Union the atomic bomb. They didn't do that. They clearly did not give the Soviet Union the atomic bomb. The Soviet Union developed the atomic bomb themselves. Didn't matter. They electrocuted the Rosenbergs. Things were bad in the 1950s. Things were bad in the 1950s. The Civil Rights Congress, a group that went around fighting for black people in the South, trying to stop the execution of innocent black men, trying to demand the right of people to drink from the same drinking fountains, boycotting Sears because Sears had a policy of banning black people from its stores in the South, protesting and picketing Sears. The Civil Rights Congress was singled out by the U.S. Department of Justice and declared to be a communist subversive organization. They even passed a special rule that if somebody was arrested, the Civil Rights Congress was not allowed to post bail for them. They would not accept bail from the Civil Rights Congress because it was considered to be a communist front organization. And they went after gay people. They went after gay people. The LGBT community was viciously targeted. Joe McCarthy made homophobic jokes on the floor of Congress. They passed a law that said that no gay person could work for the U.S. State Department. Why? Because everybody knows that all gay people are communists. Did you know that? I didn't know that, but apparently all gay people are communists. And also, if one was gay, the commies might be able to blackmail you to get you what you wanted to do. So the U.S. government had a policy, thanks to McCarthyism, that no gay person could get a government job. To be a teacher in a number of states, you had to swear that you were not a member of the Communist Party. It was pretty intense, pretty intense. Public employees forced to take insane oaths. But I wish I could go back in time. I wish that I could go back in time and say to those witch hunters, those right-wingers, those anti-communists, those McCarthyists, those social democrats and Trotskyites who cooperated with McCarthyism, wish I could say to them, enjoy yourselves. Enjoy yourselves. Have your fun while it lasts. Because pretty soon, Joe McCarthy is going to be drinking himself to death. And he's going to be exposed as a liar and a fraud on national television. And pretty soon, you know that issue the communists are always talking about? Civil rights? Pretty soon there are going to be civil rights demonstrations going on all over the country. There's going to be a man named Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who is leading marches of hundreds of thousands of people on Washington demanding civil rights, the thing that the communists had been supporting. There is going to be Robert F. Williams, an African-American leader of the NAACP who's going to take up guns to fight the Ku Klux Klan. And when the government tries to arrest him for it, he's going to flee to China, and he's going to flee to Cuba, and he's going to broadcast revolutionary black propaganda from Cuba, Radio Free Dixie, into the United States. There's going to be something called the Black Panther Party that's going to be formed. And when you try to go have a war with Vietnam, there's going to be young people who light their draft cards on fire. There are going to be young people running through the streets of New York City and Washington, D.C., and California and San Francisco with the flag of the Vietnamese National Liberation Front. There are going to be people all over the streets of this country chanting, "Ho, ho, Ho Chi Minh, the NLF is going to win." There are going to be people running through the streets chanting, "One side's right, one side's wrong, victory to the Viet Cong." There are going to be American soldiers shooting their officers when they're ordered to massacre innocent civilians. There's going to be a U.S. Army falling apart. There is going to be a whole planet cheering for the National Liberation Front of Vietnam. There is going to be a whole planet supporting and admiring the Black Panthers. Gaddafi is going to come to power in Libya. There is going to be an explosion of revolutionary anti-imperialist ferment even in the United States of America. So enjoy yourselves. Enjoy yourselves. Have fun while it lasts. Have your fun. Enjoy yourselves. Have a good time. Enjoy yourselves. Enjoy your witch hunts. Enjoy your McCarthyism. Enjoy your execution of the Rosenbergs and your frame-ups. Enjoy your FBI repression of progressive activists. But I've got a feeling that your little party is not going to last very long, because A does not equal A. You never step into the same river twice. And Mao is coming down from the mountain, and Joe McCarthy is going to drink himself to death, because the world is constantly in a state of change. Folks, the world is constantly in a state of change. Things are not the same as they were before. When the Soviet Union fell, they told us that communism was over. They said, "Oh, communism is over. This is the end of history." They even had a book called The End of History. They told us that's the last you're ever going to hear of communism. The Soviet Union is gone. China is having free market reforms. Vietnam is having market reforms. Cuba and North Korea are still doing their thing, but that's it. Communism's over. There's not going to be any communism. They went into the former USSR and they wrecked the place economically. They privatized everything, shock therapy economics, selling the country off to the highest bidder. And in Latin America, they had an economic wrecking ball. They demolished the country after country. Bolivia, Venezuela, Chile, Argentina, they just demolished countries with neoliberalism, shock therapy economics. Shock therapy economics. And they said, that communism problem, we're never going to have to deal with that ever again. Only a matter of time before China becomes a capitalist country. Only a matter of time before Vietnam becomes a capitalist country. Soviet Union is long gone. In Latin America, all the communist groups, Communist Party, Cuba is isolated. That's the end of that. No more communism. No more communism. Never again. It's all done. It's all done. The Cold War is over. The United States is the only superpower. And that means we can pass the North American Free Trade Agreement and ship jobs to Mexico and demolish Mexico's agricultural sector and wreck Haiti and drive Haiti into poverty. And that means we can create this group called the World Trade Organization. And then we can overrule laws. If a country passes a labor law to protect its workers, why, we can take them to the World Trade Organization and punish them for it, right? We can tear down borders. In fact, we can even set up an international criminal court, and we can drag African leaders and leaders of former Yugoslavia to this international criminal court and indict them. We can set up one global capitalist system, and nobody can get in our way. There's nobody to stand against us. But I really wish, I really wish I was alive at the time, but I was too young to know any better. I really wish I could go to Milton Friedman and Alan Greenspan and Bill Clinton and Bill Browder and George Soros and say, enjoy yourselves. Enjoy yourselves, neoliberals. Enjoy yourselves, libertarianism. Enjoy yourselves, free marketeers. Enjoy yourselves, capitalists. But I've got a feeling you're not going to be too happy when somebody named Hugo Chavez gets elected in Venezuela. You try to overthrow him with a coup, but you just can't do it because he's too darn popular with the rank and file soldiers. And then pretty soon, there's going to be a leader called Evo Morales in Bolivia. And pretty soon, the Sandinistas are going to be back in Nicaragua. And pretty soon, there's going to be a new bank created called the Bolivarian Alternative of Latin America. Oh, and you're not going to be too thrilled when somebody named Vladimir Putin gets elected in Russia. And suddenly, Russia's oil and gas is back under the control of the public. And suddenly, Russia is back in business. And Russians are no longer starving. And they're suddenly rebuilding Russia economically. And Russia is doing business with Venezuela and Nicaragua and Cuba and Vietnam. Oh, and hold tight, because I know you said you thought that China was just going to go back to capitalism. Let me tell you about a guy named Xi Jinping. Yeah, there's going to be a guy named Xi Jinping who comes along, and I think he's going to put a little bit of a monkey wrench in your plans there. I think Xi Jinping is going to come along, and pretty soon there's going to be pictures of Mao everywhere in China. Pretty soon they're going to be studying the Chinese Communist Party and the Marxist-Leninist ideology. Pretty soon they are going to have a mass line campaign and root out all the corrupt officials. You know, all those officials that you bribed in the party to let corporations do whatever they want, all those corrupt officials that you handed money to, all those fake communists who whittled their way into positions of power in China. Well, President Xi Jinping is going to pull them out of there. He's going to pull them out of there. He is going to get rid of them. He is going to crack down on corruption. And pretty soon there's going to be something called the Belt and Road Initiative. The Belt and Road Initiative. And while America and American imperialism and capitalism goes to developing countries and drives them into poverty and makes people poverty, every country around the world is going to want to start doing business with China, because China's building hospitals and schools and railroads and highways and power plants, while America is bombing and destroying and impoverishing people. And pretty soon that China that you said, oh, they're going to be capitalist pretty soon, just give it time. That China is going to be surging forward, and there's going to be nothing you can do about it. Why? Because Joe McCarthy drank himself to death. Because Mao is coming down from the mountain. Because A does not equal A, and you never step into the same river twice. You better believe it, folks. You better believe it. Folks, I can apply this understanding to my own life. Folks, when I got out of college in Cleveland, those were not good years. The U.S. economy had crashed. We were in a financial crisis. I was out of college, Cleveland, economically not in a good situation. Not in a good situation. And I worked at many gas stations. I am not a very good gas station employee. I'll tell you that much. I don't know what it was. Maybe I would be better at it now, but attention to little details has never been my strong suit. And I kept getting fired from gas station jobs. And you know, I used to actually go and sell my blood plasma. I don't know if anyone's ever done that. You're not selling your blood because they pump the other stuff back into you. They take your blood out of your veins and they separate the plasma of your blood from the other part of your blood, and then they shoot the other part of your blood back into you. And it's quite cold when it goes back into you. They shoot your cold blood back into you. Yeah, that's what I used to do. And I'll never forget the day when I was in line to sell my blood plasma. You could do it 2 times a week. And so this was my second time, and it was a Friday. Fridays at the blood plasma center were always packed. They were always packed because people wanted some extra money for the weekend. And, you know, people say, oh, it's just drug addicts who sell their blood. Bullshit. I saw mothers there with their kids. They would take turns watching each other's. Sorry, it's just hard for me to talk about these things. I saw mothers watching each other's kids while they went in and sold their blood plasma. I saw college students, saw senior citizens, people who'd worked their whole lives getting by on Social Security, didn't have enough, and they would sell their blood plasma. Like I said, there was always a big line on Fridays. Always a big line on Fridays because people wanted to have money for the weekend. And I will never forget, one Friday, I went into the blood plasma center. I was going to sell my blood. I was going to sell my blood at the blood plasma center. And I will remember I got there at about 11, and I'm in the line. The whole place is packed full of people. I mean, it's just packed full of people. And, you know, it's white people, black people, Asian folks, Latinos. We're all packed in there. There's people outside. So I'm sitting there with my number. Other people are in there. They're calling people in. Suddenly, you know, the people who work there all wear white coats as if they're medical professionals or something. They ain't. You know, it's just a technician thing. You know, it's like, you know, they're wearing white coats like you want them to think they're a doctor. Suddenly, around 2 o'clock, I've been there since 11. There's people that have been there since early in the morning, and it's been 11. You know, this woman in a white coat walks in. She's got 2 police officers next to her. Never forget this. Got 2 police officers next to her as she's walking to the front of the room. The 2 cops are there, you know, holding their guns. Kind of. The woman's there. 2 cops standing next to her, you know, kind of eyeing everybody, holding their guns. And the woman there in her white coat, she says, Folks, I'm really sorry. I have to make this announcement, okay? It's not my fault. Folks, it's not my fault. But I have to make this announcement. It is not my fault, okay? So don't get mad at me. It's not my fault, but folks, the freezer where we put everyone's blood has broken, okay? So we can't buy any more blood from anyone today. So everyone's just got to leave. We're going to have to lock the door. So it's not my fault. I know you're getting mad, but it's not my fault. It's not my fault. And everybody in the room is just like, what? We've been here for hours. What are you doing? I mean, everyone in the room is furious. And the cops are like, keep it down, keep it down. And everybody in the room is just furious. There's about to be a riot in that place. And this woman, she said, I've been here all day watching my kids and watching other people's kids. She's like, how can you do this? How can you do this? Can't you just compensate us for our time? And she's like, ma'am, we don't buy people's time here at the plasma center. We buy your blood plasmas. We don't buy time. This isn't a job, okay? We don't buy people's time. We buy blood plasma. That's what we do here. So no, we cannot do that. Oh, people were ready to riot. People were furious. People were furious there that day at the blood plasma center. And she was lucky they had 2 or 3 cops standing there next to the woman, because there could have been a riot. I will never forget that day. I would never forget that day. That was a wild day. That was the wild day. The freezer broke, don't know why. And all kinds of people, including myself, who'd been waiting to sell our blood, we were, I don't know, SOL, as they say. And that was a pretty wild day. Pretty wild day. Pretty wild day. And it's funny because actually, that area that I was in, the west side of Cleveland, where they had the plasma center where I used to sell my blood, that area used to be a very prosperous place. That used to be a center of the steel industry. That used to be a center of the steel industry, right? There used to be, the steel yards in Cleveland down by the river used to be a place for deeply prosperous employment. Steel workers at 1950s, 1960s, steel workers were some of the best paid industrial workers. And, they got rid of the steel industry. The steel industry of Cleveland shut down. What they did, though, is that in Cleveland, and I think they still have this, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a while since I've been there. But in the area that used to be where all the steel mills were, the city of Cleveland actually paid for this fancy bus line and paved an area, and they put up a Walmart and a Sam's Club and a number of big box stores where workers are paid very, very low wages, and they don't have any union representation. And the place that they called it, this service sector place that they erected in Cleveland, they called it Steel Yards Common. That's what it's. I think it's still called that, Steel Yards Common. All right, in memory of the prosperous, good-paying steel jobs that were once there, we have Steel Yards Common. Think about it, right? This used to be a prosperous area I was in, and now it was an area where people were desperate and struggling. That's capitalism, and that's the trajectory of the capitalist system in our time. And that's what's happening. The United States is in an overall state of decay. It's in an overall state of decay. When I think about my life, when I was selling my blood plasma in Cleveland, I think about how pretty soon I was in New York City. Pretty soon I was traveling around the world. And if you had told me at that moment that I would be where I am today, I'd be talking to you from the 21st floor of a fancy skyscraper in New York City, that I'd be setting up a Marxist think tank to spread the revolutionary message to people, that I'd have a book that was the top new release on Amazon in the category of anarchism. This is the #1 new release in the category of anarchism on Amazon, if you told me that I would have gone to Russia and gone to Iran and gone to Venezuela and gone to Brazil, if you'd have told me that we were on the verge of building a new think tank to spread socialism, that I'd be on here broadcasting to thousands of people talking about revolutionary ideology, you had told me all of that, I knew A does not equal A. I knew that you never step into the same river twice. I knew that Mao came down from the mountain. I knew that Joe McCarthy drank himself to death, but I still might have had a hard time believing you because those were hard times. Those were hard times. But it's important to keep all of that in mind. It's important to keep all of that in mind. It's important to keep all of that in mind. And it's interesting because some people have asked me, why did you write this book, Caleb? Why did you write this book? Why in the world did you write a book about BreadTube, right? You got Jabba the Bosch on there. Caleb is a Nazi. You got Skippy the Bear, who's, he's got his suicide porn channel. Why in the world would you do this? Why do this? Well, the reason I did this is for the simple reason that more people listen to the BreadTubers. More people listen to the BreadTubers than listen to the Workers' World Party or the Communist Party or the Socialist Workers' Party or the Socialist Party or the Spartacist League or the League for the Revolutionary Party or think about it. I mean, we got an alphabet soup of communist parties. We got the RCP and the ISO and the QWH and the XYZ. And we got a lot of leagues, and we got a lot of committees, and we got about 5 different Fourth Internationals. We got a 5th International. More people listen to BreadTube than listen to any of those people. I'm just being real with you. More people listen to BreadTube than listen to any of those people. All right? There are a lot of different people calling themselves communists and all of that, but far more people listen to ContraPoints and Socialism Done Left, and Jabba the Bosch, and they do. And H-Bomber Guy Brewis. More people listen to them. And so, if nobody comes along and points out where these people are wrong, and points out how their ideology is fake socialism that serves imperialism, and points out how these people are serving the ultra-rich imperialists, and points out that what these people are preaching, and especially the vicious hatred they preach for real socialists and real communists, and the hatred for China, and the hatred for Cuba, and the hatred for Venezuela that these people preach, right? If somebody doesn't come, if nobody comes along, then all the people who are listening to them will never have been challenged. There is not a single other book on Amazon with the word BreadTube in the title. This is the only book on Amazon that has BreadTube in the title. And there is not a single other book with the complete, the single word BreadTube in the title. Now, is that because what am I trying to say there? Am I trying to say, Caleb is so amazing, no one has ever done what he has done. I am a legend in my own mind, be in awe of me. No, that is not what I am saying. What I'm saying is, communists, get your shit together. More people are listening to them than listening to that. Maybe instead of writing a book about the Spartacist League, maybe instead of writing a book about the CPUSA, maybe instead of writing a book about Bob Avakian, maybe, just maybe, it's time to write a book about BreadTube. Because there are some serious contenders out there. People are ready to hear what we have to say. There's an audience for BreadTube. There's an audience for them. People want to hear socialist and leftist ideas. So the ruling class is, dishing out some fake socialism to try and control and manipulate people who are interested in all the stuff we talk about. People are ready to hear this. I've been beating the drum out of the movement to the masses. Out of the movement to the masses. I have been beating that drum for so long. I've been beating that drum for so long because it's true. Average middle Americans have had their homes foreclosed. They've seen their kids go to jail. They've seen, lives destroyed with opioids. They're facing a lifetime of low-wage, short-term service sector jobs. They're watching a brutal police state unfold. They're more anti-racist than ever before, and they are ready to fight back. They're ready to fight back. Average working class Americans are ready to fight back. They are ready to fight back. Average working class Americans are tired of what the big banks and big corporations and big monopolies and warmongers have done to their country. They are tired. They are tired of what the international bankers and Wall Street monopolists and hustlers and money sharks, what the oil cartels, what the weapons manufacturers and the military-industrial complex, they are tired of what Wall Street imperialism has done to their homeland. And what they need to understand is that the same thing that is being done to the United States right now, jobs destroyed, living standards driven down, drugs, imperialist wars, this is what the imperialists have been doing to Africa for 100 years. And this is what the imperialists have been doing to Asia for 100 years. This is what the imperialists have been doing to South America for 100 years. This is what imperialism is. Capitalism is not, the pencil factory is not there because the guy owns the pencil factory and there's people who work in the pencil factory. No. 21st century capitalism is imperialism. It is a system of global monopolies where big banks and corporations in the Western countries carve out the world as a sphere of influence and hold back economic development, keeping the world poor so that Wall Street and London can stay rich. Capitalism in our time is imperialism. And no, that is not anti-Semitic to talk about that. We're not talking about Jews or Muslims or Christians or any group. We're talking about an economic system. We're talking about what Lenin wrote about in his book, Imperialism, the Highest Stage of Capitalism. And the fact that BreadTube wants to tell you that you're not allowed to talk about imperialism because somehow they think imperialism is anti-Semitic shows you exactly who they work for. It shows you exactly what they're all about. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't talk about imperialism. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't question what they're saying about China. Don't let anybody tell you that you're not allowed to question the lies that pave the way for the next war. Do not let anyone tell you that. Scream against imperialism until the day you die. Expose the lies of American mainstream media. We ain't gonna take it anymore. We ain't gonna take it anymore. We are fighting back. Imperialism is doomed, and we are the ones to finish it off. Don't get me started about it. And that labor aristocracy that held imperialism together for so long, that aristocracy of labor, that held the imperialist system together for so long, that cushy middle class, that bribe they gave American workers to support their wars and to support empire and to support racism and police brutality, that bribe is gone. That bribe is gone. They have gotten rid of the aristocracy of labor. They don't need it anymore. They don't need a layer of good paid workers in their steel mills anymore. They don't need a layer of good paid workers in their auto plants anymore. That bribe, that labor aristocracy bribe is gone. And now is the moment when the American working class can stand arm in arm in solidarity with the people of Vietnam and the people of China and the people of South America and the people of Africa and the people of Asia. Now is the time. The potential, the revolutionary potential for what we have to offer is here. Our moment is now. Our moment is now. But you know what, folks? Hate to break it to you. Hate to break it to you. I wish I could get on here and tell you that it's going to be so easy. I wish I could get on here and say, you know, it's going to be easy. It's going to be easy. It's going to be a cakewalk. It's going to be easy, right? We're going to just go out to the Americans and tell them that socialism is the answer. And they're going to say, wow, I never thought of that. Let's have socialism. And we'll just peacefully, happily walk into socialism. And it'll be fun and it'll be easy. I wish I could tell you that. I wish I could tell you that. But I'm not a grifter. If I was a grifter, I would tell you what you want to hear. That's how you can spot a grifter. A grifter is somebody who tells you what they think you want to hear. I'm not a grifter. I am not a grifter. I will tell you things that will make you uncomfortable. I will bring you bad news sometimes that you do not want to hear. I will do it. I will. I will tell you things that are unpleasant. I will make you aware of truths that you do not want to be aware of. I will do that. I will. I will. You can count on me to do that. Go back and listen to some Malcolm X speeches, right? Malcolm X was not a grifter. And many of Malcolm X's speeches contain phrases like, I know you don't want to hear this, but look it up. Because Malcolm X was not a grifter. And if I got on here and said, well, it's very easy. Oh boy, it's going to be happy, happy fun. It'll be a nice night. If I got on here and told you that, I would be grifting. But I'm not grifting. I'm telling you the truths that may be uncomfortable for you to hear. And the truths are that it's always darkest before dawn. It's always darkest before dawn. We're going to have to ride out the storm. Our day is coming. Our day is here. People are ready for this. Our day is here. But it's going to get hard. It's going to get tough. The final section of this book, before the appendices started, I quoted from Lenin. This is a quote from Vladimir Lenin from his essay, Imperialism and the Split in Socialism. This is what he wrote. This is him writing 1916. He's talking about against the social imperialists and the social democrats who sold out the war and supported World War I. They said, neither we nor anyone else can calculate precisely what portion of the proletariat is following and will follow the social chauvinists and opportunists. This will be revealed only by the struggle, and it will be definitely decided only by the socialist revolution. And it is therefore our duty, if we wish to remain socialists, to go down lower and deeper to the real masses. This is the whole meaning and the whole purport of the struggle against opportunism. By exposing the fact that the opportunists and social chauvinists are in reality betraying and selling the interests of the masses, that they are defending the temporary privileges of a minority of workers, that they are the vehicles of bourgeois ideas and influences, that they are really allies and agents of the bourgeoisie, we teach the masses to appreciate their true political interests, to fight for socialism and for the revolution, through all of the long and painful vicissitudes of imperialist war and imperialist armistices. Let me repeat that last part, in case you didn't get it. By exposing the fact that opportunists and social chauvinists are in reality betraying and selling the interests of the masses, that they are defending the temporary privileges of a minority of workers, that they are vehicles of bourgeois ideas and influences, that they are allies and agents of the bourgeoisie, we teach the masses to appreciate their true political and painful vicissitudes of imperialist wars and imperialist armistices. Folks, exposing people like BreadTube is not just a fun thing to do. It is our responsibility. It's our responsibility as socialists. We need to expose them. That is how we teach the masses to appreciate their true interests. But it's going to get hard. It's going to get difficult. There are people lying about me right now. I expected this. There is, one of these clowns has said on his streams, I kid you not, that there is, quote, not a single citation in my new book, right? Not a single citation. Well, maybe he should check out page 1. It's actually page 2. The first page of the book, there is a citation. Cornelius Cardew, Lords of Labor. And then maybe they should check out the section where I cite the CIA World Factbook. And maybe they should check out the section where I cite dramareport.com. And maybe they should talk about the section where I cite Vice magazine. And maybe they should talk about the section where I cite Marx, or I cite Lenin, or I cite Malthus, or I cite Steve Hassan, or I cite all kinds of people. And in fact, there is a bibliography in my book that starts on page 191 and goes on for pages. But he says there's not a single citation in the book. Okie dokie. Well, I guess there's not. I mean, that's what he said. I mean, and he can't be wrong. I mean, it's not like, pro-imperialist people ever lie. I mean, it kind of reminds me. I did a refutation of a PragerU video a while back. There's a PragerU video called Who Was Karl Marx? And in that PragerU video, this professor says, there's no data. There's no data in the book Capital by Karl Marx. There's lots of data in the book Capital by Karl Marx. Karl Marx spent all of his money practically going to the British Museum and asking, for data to compile the book. But hey, he said it, right? I mean, I believe it was Joseph Stalin who famously said that paper is an amazing substance because it can withstand having even the most blatant falsehoods written upon it. And I guess YouTube is an amazing app because it can withstand having the most bold-faced bullshit lies told upon it. But we should expect this. And they've come for me before, and they're going to keep coming for me. They've started up about Dugin again. I must be a fascist because I talked to Dugin. Well, Dugin's not a fascist. He rejects both communism and fascism. He's a traditionalist conservative, and I'm not Dugin. But no, you talk to somebody who we think is a fascist, so therefore you're no. Right? And, there's other stuff. I mean, we'll see what they come up with. I'm always impressed. I mean, first my father was a Wall Street banker. I don't know. My father was a Wall Street banker. That was one we heard. I think there was a guy who said I was into lift and carry. I didn't even know what lift and carry was, but apparently there was this guy posting porn videos saying that I had a sexual kink for carrying women on my back. That's a new one. I never heard that one before, but I was into lift and carry, and he had all these porn videos. They're coming for me, right? Get ready for it. They're coming for me. They're coming for me. They're coming for me. And what is amazing about these people is that they've drawn heavily. They've drawn heavily from Hitler, all right? In Mein Kampf, Adolf Hitler talks about the concept of the big lie. You can look this up, the big lie. The big lie. And what's the big lie? Well, basically, Hitler is telling people that if you want to lie to people, don't tell a little lie. You got to tell a big lie. Because people will believe that other people are capable of little lies. We all tell little white lies here and there in our life. When you tell a big lie, and it's just so damn big, it's just so astronomically big, it is such a big lie. If you tell a big lie, people just have a hard time believing it. Right? I mean, the implications, if someone tells a lie that is that big, is that, you can forgive somebody for telling a little lie. You can't forgive somebody for telling a very big lie. Right? And Vosh is on his streams, not saying that I did something he disagrees with, not saying I'm wrong, telling his viewers that I am a literal Nazi, that I am literally a member of a Nazi group, that I am a literal Nazi. Those are his words. That's a big lie. And the thing is, that's such a big lie that his fans either have to believe it or believe he's evil. Right? Think about it. That's all they can do. Because if someone is going to tell a lie that is that big, that level of character assassination, saying that I am actually a Nazi, right? Then he's clearly an evil person. That is clearly not acceptable behavior. That's not a little white lie. When you claim that someone is actually a literal Nazi, that is pretty awful behavior. So all of his fans have to sit there and go, okay, do I want to end my relationship with Vosh, or do I just want to believe him? That's what they have to do. That's where they're at. And that's the power of the big lie, right? What have we all heard our whole life? Communism never worked anywhere. Well, it clearly has. China, space travel, cell phones, AK-47 rifles. Geez, how did Russia and China industrialize? Oh, geez, why does Cuba have the best healthcare system? It's clearly a big lie. But why do they get away with it? Because it's a big lie. It's a big lie. And people are, when you tell a big lie, it puts people in a position where they just accept it. Because if you say that communism didn't fail everywhere it's ever been tried, that means the government of the United States are the most vicious, deceptive liars out there. That means that our entire educational system in the United States is deceptive propaganda. That means that American mainstream media cannot be trusted on anything. If they are going to tell a lie that big, that communism never, anywhere, had any success, ever, and it's clearly false, then you can't believe anything they say. And that's a pill that is tough to swallow. And that's the power of the big lie. When you give people a pill that is too big to swallow, they won't swallow it. And that's the power of the big lie. Right? And that's why these people use the big lie. That's why they use Adolf Hitler and Joseph Goebbels' tactic of the big lie. Because people don't want to swallow that pill. It's too much for people to digest, right? That Vosh is a satanic, evil liar who goes around claiming that I'm actually a white supremacist when I'm married to a woman who's not white, who goes around telling his followers that I'm a white supremacist when I went to court with police brutality victims, where you can read articles about my anti-police brutality activism. You know, if I'm not a literal Nazi, Vosh is a satanic liar. And that is too much for his followers to swallow. So he lies big, right? He's basically giving them an ultimatum. Me or truth. Me or truth. And it works. It works, right? Just like the American educational system. Just like American media. Communism's never worked anywhere. And again, if that's true, you know, you're basically giving everyone an ultimatum. You want to remain at peace with American society, American media, American schools, American, government, American universities. If you want to be at peace with it, you got to deny you got to just accept the big lie, because that's not a little lie. This is the power of the big lie. I think this is the power of the big lie, right? As you give people that kind of ultimatum. A big lie forces people to choose. And choosing can be difficult sometimes. Choosing can be difficult. Can be. And there may be a time where I'm talking to you, the person watching this, there probably will be a time where you are going to have to make a choice. You're going to have to make a choice. Am I going to stand for truth? Or am I going to go along with the crowd? You're going to have to make a choice. And that will come along. You'll be tested. We are all going to be tested. I've been tested in my life, trust me. And you're going to be tested. Things are good right now. I'm very happy. We just had an amazing Center for Political Innovation retreat. The book is selling like crazy, like hotcakes. My social media is exploding right now. I'm happy. Things are good, and that's good. It's good that things are good. We should allow ourselves to enjoy the good times. At the same time, be aware that things are not always so easy. And there will come a time where we may be tested. And I actually want to read to you the words of a great communist, not a Marxist, certainly not a Marxist, not a scientific socialist, but a great communist who lived about 2,000 years ago. And his name is Jesus Christ. I'm going to read to you what Jesus Christ told his followers. This is what Jesus Christ, the communist revolutionary who was persecuted by the Roman Empire, who drove the money changers out of the temple, who said that the last shall be first and the first shall be last, the great revolutionary martyr who sacrificed his life for what he believed in, who became immortal in death. I'm going to read to you what Jesus Christ told his followers. And then that will be the end of my opening remarks. This is what Jesus Christ told his followers. Think not that I come to send peace to the earth, because I came not to send peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. A man's foes shall be they of his own household. And he that loveth his father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. And he that loveth son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And he that taketh not his cross and followeth after me is not worthy of me. And he that finds his life shall lose it. And he that loses his life for my sake shall find it. And he that receiveth you receiveth me. And he that receiveth me receiveth him that sent me. And he that receiveth a prophet in the name of a prophet shall receive a prophet's reward. And he that receiveth a righteous man in the name of a righteous man shall receive a righteous man's reward. And whosoever shall give drink unto one of these little ones a cup of cold water, only in the name of a disciple, verily I say unto you, he shall in no wise lose his reward. And that concludes my opening message for today.